Good morning. I welcome you to come to this session in the morning. And my topic is about cybersecurity risks in the medical device industry. Basically, I have been involved in consulting business in the medical device industry. I work for my family business, AJ Group Limited, and try to talk with different vendors and also distributors and healthcare providers. And I find many issues about cybersecurity risks, but it seems that no one cares too much, even they have experienced a lot of cyber attack in their working place in hospitals. So first of all, give you an idea. Nowadays, medical devices are highly connected, and there are many networking in this medical device, just like very simple one, medical bags, that is our business. It is classified as Class 1 medical devices. That is the lowest risky one. That's why FDA will not regulate so much. And however, you know that for those medical bags, they have to be connected with a lot of medical devices, just like these monitors. You can have centralized monitoring system, and you have portable monitoring. Many devices are connected with the bags. Even in the US, they estimated at least 13 pieces are connected to a low-risky medical bag. Probably you may know that there are many intelligent medical bags now. You can put a lot of software inside to monitor the health conditions of the patients. Medical devices is a huge industry in the US. It's more than $1,500 billion, and it counts half of the world market. Half. And so we would like to see what's going on. For me, I'm very concerned about the cybersecurity risk of those Class 1 products, just like medical bags. Even they are recognized as low-risk one. But if they are so connected with all low-risky devices, just like some simple data storage devices. So get you an idea about what's going on in the medical device ecology, the entire system. How many of you are involved in the healthcare industry? Just, oh, two, wonderful, it's very good. So you can give me all the feedback now. In the medical device industry, just like this simple one is about US system, there are more than 6,000 medical devices manufacturers in the US, but there are more than 600,000 devices. They can vary from very simple one, even a dental floss is a medical device, or a very complicated one, like those imaging machine. And these devices are very complex, and also the technology is evolving so rapidly. Even some devices are simple healthcare devices, can be medical devices, just like our watch can be a medical devices. And there are many vendors, manufacturers, and even some manufacturers would like to outsource those products in developing countries, in particular for those Class 1 products, because it seems that they are low risk, medical bags, monitors, wheelchair. Do you know what is Class 1 was Class 2? Class 2 products. Do I need to elaborate this?
No, that's fine, you can.
Yeah, okay. Because just get you an idea, well, FDA has tried to classify the medical devices into 3 types. Class 1 is the one that has minimum risk. Class 2 are just like insulin pump. Class 3 are those very risky one. For example, you put something in your heart, So this is so complex, and the development is so fast, and even FDA admits that government regulations is lacking behind all the changes of those technology, all the devices provided by those manufacturers. And there are so many competing needs because one side, the government, the hospital, healthcare providers always ask what? Lower the cost, lower the price of the medical devices. And on the other hand, many startup businesses would like to develop new products. Very many new medical devices in the market now. It's changing rapidly. So there are so many competing needs, and beyond the imagination of regulators, and even beyond the imagination of healthcare providers. So can you see this bomb? What do you feel when you work in this field? Oh, I hope you will not. It's all right. You know, it's like a bomb, you know. Means that something will happen anytime. No one knows, because the cause and effect relationship between the medical device and the crisis have some time gap. So even you use these devices, you might cause certain effect, but it will cause later, maybe several years later. But you have left your jobs or new devices come up. So no one knows who is accountable for this. It's very dangerous. It's like a bomb. You know, can you see the fire? Would you worry when you work in healthcare session? You know, really a lot of crisis. And FDA tries their best and try to develop more and more trust with different vendors and different stakeholders. However, these unknown crises are contingent, are unknown and unregulated by FDA. Even FDA tries the best to do it. That is my concern, in particular for those low-risky ones. But they are connected to many devices. Whenever you are connected, it means that what? You are part of the crisis. So I ask myself a question now. What's going on? And see this. You know that whenever you buy a medical device, in order to be effective, you need to train a lot of staff, a lot of people, you need a lot of maintenance. And there are a lot of hidden costs behind a device, because our family business is in the medical device. People will say, why is it so expensive? But if you know that they have to pay for the certificate, they have to pay for those maintenance, you have to sign the maintenance cost and training and insurance. All these costs will add up just like a hidden cost. Okay, if you ask the vendors or the distributors to provide cybersecurity management, it will increase the cost. Can you see this? So many people cannot understand what are the hidden costs behind the medical devices and the system. On the other hand, healthcare providers have to keep on lowering the cost of the medical device, but they keep on buying more and more new medical devices. Can you see all these competing needs? So when I work this work, and because our family business is related to the hospitals and the vendors on the earth, we have been in many prominent exhibitions in Germany, in Dubai, in Israel, and talk to vendors. When I ask them, would you think about this crisis? I feel very bad. They say, our products fulfill FDA requirement. We got FDA certificate. We got European certificates. That's fine, you know. What are your concerns? So we can see that even these vendors, or even sometimes we talk to healthcare providers, hospitals in Hong Kong, 18 hospitals in Hong Kong. So they look for the security of independent product. would you think about this? Whenever you buy something, you just see the security of independent product. They never consider the security of the network. We talk about the crisis in the network, in the system. So you can see why this is so huge risk to patients. Of course, those who are in healthcare session, you will be considered this. However, there's so many factors affecting the patients. And many people would not consider whether the network system affects the patient's health. So then I asked myself, why don't I go to see what is the expectation of FDA? What FDA has done first, and then try to see the performance of existing vendors, healthcare providers. Why do we have this great gap? What are the reasons for this gap? And how can my research work improve the situation, narrow the gap, and try to avoid this unknown crisis? It's there. It's just like global warming. Later, we have to pay for the consequences of all these medical devices. So FDA has defined the cybersecurity, and probably you may know this, is it right? And because they say that you prevent unauthorized access and also allow limited authorized use of the information. Because today, all the data of the patients can be stored in every place. You can be even in your mobile phone, and those devices are connected. So doctors can access those information in many places, even outside the US, because you want to collaborate and to solve the problems for patients. Of course, you may hear those remote healthcare provides. And FDA tried to, say that what is the cybersecurity risk management? Is a shared responsibility among all the stakeholders. Means that it is a community work. Everyone has to participate, including, of course, the medical device manufacturer, the user, means healthcare provider, the information technology system integrator, and even a lot of IT vendors, third parties. Think about this. All parties, even are not regulated by the FDA, are called to participate in the management of the cybersecurity risk. And the FDA has a lot of expectations on manufacturers, in particular US vendors. They ask them to treat cyber hygiene as the first priority in their design process. That is why in the development, whenever they design the product, cybersecurity should be their first priority. And then the manufacturers should initiate the entire process, including the procurement process of healthcare provider, and even in the maintenance and operations. It means that they have to inform the healthcare providers whenever there is a new software, whenever there is a chance of malware, outdated software. You can see that it's a huge job for the manufacturers. Manufacturers are expected to initiate, to do all the work, and FDA has tried the best to develop a lot of workshops, a lot of guidelines, for example, these guidelines, last, I think, 2 years ago almost, and develop this and ask the manufacturers to have a system, how to develop the process, how to manage the cybersecurity. And this one is basically tell them how to use this framework. And this framework try to standardize those cybersecurity practice. And yes, this process seems very logical, is it right? Reasonable. You have to identify which process you need to protect, which process you need to detect earlier. However, just go to another slide now. These are the expectations. Cybersecurity is a shared responsibility among the stakeholders. FDA expects all these parties can develop a community together, share information, support each other. In particular, manufacturers have to initiate the entire process, have to manage the entire life cycle of the product from the design up to the disposal. Is it too much? Think about this. And they have done a good job because they have done some good case studies, some good or key medical device companies try to start to do this work. And then now let us to look at the performance. There's a survey about the medical device security done by this institution, and they asked 240 medical devices manufacturers and 262 healthcare providers in the US. And they asked that, how likely you know that there's an attack on your medical device? You can see those manufacturers, 67% say yes, they know that. They will be attacked. And 56% of healthcare delivery organizations say yes, they all know they would. Unfortunately, we tell you this, I will not tell you too details about the finding, but they say that usually the FDA guideline for cybersecurity risk management is not enough. It is not so relevant to them, and also they don't have much time to participate in those workshops or setting the benchmark. Even the manufacturers, they design the product. They have not much confidence about the security of the devices. They say that building secure devices is too challenging because you have different types of devices. You can guarantee these devices is secure at that time, but you have many devices that were produced 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they were not secure, and you put them together. Can you see this? So they say, and let up medical device security testing. How do you test the system? Because a system might be in the healthcare provider system. It's too much. And IT people would not do this for the healthcare provider because sometimes manufacturers ask the third party to do the work. And the third party have signed a contract and not to disclose anything. So there are a lot of things in the system, and no one can be accountable for the risk. So who will suffer? Patients. We can see this. And then when I ask many people, I find that indeed they have already know the malware, WannaCry, I think last year, 2017, about 200,000 patients were affected in 20 countries, national attack. And so they know that. But cybersecurity is not in the design process. Only after something's happened, you fix it quickly, just like some company would fix their software quickly. Just Bayer would, I think Bayer is a chemical company, also quickly fix something. But you can see that they are not perceived security as a competitive advantage. They find that providing innovative, new medical devices is their competitive advantage. And many American vendors, in particular manufacturers, really struggle a lot. They know that. They want to do something to try to catch up, but indeed the internal culture does not emphasize on security, and they don't have enough finance and human resources, in particular for those small and medium-sized companies. Of course, you have large companies like Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic. These are huge companies. They have resources to do this. And even you don't do secure network, there's no punishment. No one knows, New products come out, and there's no incentive for them to develop a secure system, to test it, because you have unknown problem. How can you make this unknown problem to be known and unknown? You don't know what problems will arise. And then you try to know those unknown problems, those crises will come, and then try to routinize those problems and make sure you can check it daily and make sure you have time and space to prepare for this crisis. So yeah, it's a lot of managerial skill and also change in the system. Then you can see that these are the expectations of FDA, cybersecurity risk management. These are the performance of the US vendors. Think about the situation. Many vendors have already licensed or outsourced their manufacturing to OEM, original equipment manufacturing, outside US. You probably know this, you know. And because when I worked, I was so surprised. Many famous brand medical devices, in particular class 1 devices, are not made in the US. But the US would control the quality, would control the certificate. So what's the situation in the supply chain? Think about this. If you don't do this cybersecurity management in US, what happened in the supply chain management? You ask the OEM or distributors or other countries to do it. If you are focused mainly on lowering the cost, cut the cost. So my personal experience, I feel very concerned, in particular, those medical devices now were produced in developing countries, Taiwan. And many healthcare providers in these countries even do not care. They just think these are the famous brands. They should be good. They can fulfill certain requirements, quality requirements, but they cannot fulfill those cybersecurity network requirements. So you can see that even many simple things, mobile app or those electronic control panels, can be the entry point to be attacked by the cyber crisis. So the situation is worse. You can see that in the supply chain. Just my perspective. Then I ask myself, okay, these are expectations, these are performance in the US vendor, and the performance in the global supply chain related to the cybersecurity issue is worse. You know, just like what we have heard about many things happen outside US in terms of the manufacturing conditions. So we will think about what factors led them not to invest, you know, in cybersecurity in the global supply chain. You think it's very logical, is it right? You cannot invest in your own country according to the expectation of the FDA. How would you like to invest in the global supply chain management? Would you like to invest in your OEM manufacturers, original equipment manufacturers? That's you ask someone to do the product for you. They can make this product now in Taiwan, in China. Yeah, they just ship it back, you know. So, and then I do the literature review and try to understand more and interview more manufacturers, supply chain partners, healthcare providers, and try to talk to these people in many prominent medical shows like Medicare, or just like in Dubai, we have another medical show called Eric Health. You know, it's a huge market now. You know, Eric Health. So they just take it, and that is my concern. And they always try to see where you can get the most innovative new products, and these products can be claimed to be very effective to solve particular problems quickly. They always claim the functions, but they never talk about how does these devices connect with your existing system. Can you see this? So basically, it's cost. You can see all healthcare industry, no matter whether in US or in other countries, they always have to lower the cost. But they buy more. They buy more new devices. And also, because of the technology change, they know that the life cycle is shorter and shorter and shorter. And so they try to create new product to make the existing product obsolete. How can you ask the vendors to manage the entire life cycle to reduce the cybersecurity risk? And it is very sad, in particular, if the cost of solving this unknown problem or the crisis is so huge and hidden, people will not pay attention to this. And then also, many vendors do not have sufficient knowledge of the operating system of hospitals. In particular, for example, they try to sell these products to hospitals in Hong Kong. They don't know, because you have to spend a lot of time to know one system, healthcare system. And the knowledge from one healthcare system cannot be transferred to another hospital. Probably some are working in the healthcare industry. You know that each hospital is different, even in their own IT system. It's not standardized. So no one would like to spend a lot of time for one healthcare system and try to transfer to another healthcare system. So we don't just pretend nothing happened, and very happy for those devices, in particular for those Type 1, Class 1 products. And the risk of cybersecurity is there. And then for those vendors, American medical device vendors, are used to have very defensive attitude towards those vulnerability disclosure done by the people. They call it white hackers. Those people in the community love to find out what's going on and try to expose, certain problems of the devices. Yes, some people have done this, and Johnson & Johnson have done a very good job to respond to this and try to adopt open policy. But many of them try to say, it is not my problem. It is the healthcare provider problem. And healthcare provider also does not know how to deal with this. So the situation in the global supply chain is worse. Of course, you can see the picture, because there are a lot of unequal power between those US vendors and distributors in Hong Kong. And they try to ask these distributors to take it. But indeed, these distributors have a lot of knowledge about healthcare provider situation. But they say that they don't want to tell the manufacturers. Who pays for this management? It's better not to tell. Can you see all the vicious cycle? So my recommendations, I hope we can provide certain incentives for secure devices in terms of cybersecurity risk management, in terms of system management. How? We have to think about whether we can encourage those who are pioneers now, just like Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic. They have taken some steps to fulfill the FDA cybersecurity share risk management approach. If these incentives will help them to increase their competitive advantage, of course, they might develop more robust platform. But with this platform, invite better US vendors or better distributors to work together or not, or try to increase the barriers for other commerce. So I hope you can provide incentives, and probably we can use the social movement theory, something like this, try to have some community to initiate, to do a lot of vulnerability disclosures and develop more trust with those key innovators or those best exemplars in the medical device industry and try to develop a culture that emphasizes security and help those who struggle a lot. They know, indeed, I think those who are working in the healthcare industry, you have already know the crisis is here, is there. But the crisis does not know how to deal with, too much, too complex, too much money, and the FDA also has to try to do a lot of community work and try to publish a lot of guidelines or best examples. So another thing I think about is WHO, World Health Organization, and also World Intellectual Property Organizations really can negotiate with the local governments, for example, in developing countries, in Hong Kong, and also the devices vendor in the US, to make these devices to be affordable and secure. Because WHO has already published a book about the access good quality medical devices is part of the public health. You mean people need to access secure and affordable medical devices with proper education and learning. It is part of public education. We never think, oh, this is part of public education. Yes, because it's public health education. So now somebody has talked about this, WHO and WIPO can talk with these vendors and try to develop better system. Another one is to encourage, to give certificates to small and medium enterprises in the US or in the supply chain. These practices have already been done in electronic industry. So if you can fulfill certain requirements, you can get certain certificate, just like cybersecurity certificate, and encourage more and small, medium enterprises to start to take up their responsibility. And even in Britain will encourage small, medium enterprises to practice cybersecurity in their public policy and also in the public procurement. Means that when the British government has to procure something, the government has to require those small and medium enterprises must have this type of certificates. So it creates some incentives to change the entire culture. If we don't start in this way, we cannot expect the vendors, the manufacturers, to take up all this responsibility. And also, I think that some manufacturers can start up some self-regulated policy and try to develop some self-regulation and start some social movement. In particular, the investment of cybersecurity in the healthcare industry in the US is lagging behind the other industry, like finance industry. In Hong Kong, we always talk about this. In Hong Kong, we talk about blockchain. We talk about cybersecurity in the banking industry. But we seldom talk about this in the healthcare industry. We seldom talk about how to provide cybersecurity risk management to the healthcare providers. Can you see this, the gap? But this is a huge issue to our public health, to our patients' health, but people care about money more about life. So that's why recommendation is ongoing research, and I think this is some research I would like to keep on doing, but I think I would just highlight this. We would like to study how does the best example affect the practice of the entire industry and the supply chain, and also many ethical issues have to be discussed about the data ownership, accessibility, in particular if those devices are located in different countries. And then we also know that European Union have certain regulations. When I talk to those healthcare providers and the distributors, they say, how can you harmonize those regulations? Too much for us to deal with. It's better not to do it. Can you see the current situation is like this? And thank you for your listening. Any questions? Thank you. Yeah.